This is CBC Vancouver News.
A BC jury finds a man guilty of first-degree murder in the killing of a 13-year-old girl in Burnaby more than 6 years ago. Plus,
we're still working to identify a motive. We're asking anyone who may know Mr. Chen to contact us.
Police identify a father killed alongside his teenage son in Richmond and are looking for a suspect. Also,
it's customer service, not customer servant, so there is a line that can't be crossed.
a BC business is taking a firmer line against abusive customers as we dive into the holidays. Good evening, I'm Dan Burritt. Thanks for joining us. A BC Supreme Court jury has found a man charged with killing a 13-year-old girl guilty of first-degree murder. The victim was found dead in Burnaby Central Park in 2017. Ibrahim Ali was charged the next year, and as John Hernandez reports, his trial lasted almost 8 months.
The jury began their deliberation on Thursday evening. Sometime between then and Friday morning, they wanted clarification on the differences between first-degree murder, second-degree murder, and manslaughter. The Supreme Court judge gave them that explanation on Friday around 2 p.m., telling them that if someone is a victim of sexual assault and killed in the process, they are a victim of first-degree murder. The jury was then sent back to the deliberation room, and it took them about 10 minutes to reach their verdict. Shortly after, the judge announced to a full courtroom that they had reached their verdict, and a sudden wave of anticipation and tension flooded the room. People were holding back tears as they waited for those jurors, who then funneled in one by one about 5 minutes later and then read their decision that they found Ibrahim Ali guilty of first-degree murder. And so shortly after, you could see Ali take in the news. He sat quietly listening to the verdict. The victim's brother let out a large exhale, and then the courtroom dispersed. An 8-month trial come to an end. So now a sentencing hearing will be next. Court is convening early next week to come up with a date. First-degree murder is one of the most egregious charges in Canada's criminal code. Those convicted face life sentences with 25 years of no parole. As for the victim's family, they were not comfortable speaking out on Friday, but will make a public statement in the days ahead. John Hernandez, CBC News, Vancouver.
Homicide investigators say they now have a suspect in connection with last week's killing of a 13-year-old boy and his father at their home in Richmond. Police have identified one of the victims, but as Renee Filipponi explains, they're still trying to determine a motive.
The double homicide happened last Thursday evening on the 6200 block of Goldsmith Drive, a quiet Richmond neighborhood. Now, police say a family member called 911 after they discovered 46-year-old Derek Chen and his 13-year-old son, who is not being named. Investigators believe it was targeted, that someone went into that home with the intent to harm, but they can't say why or who is behind it. The Integrated Homicide Investigation Team released a grainy image of a suspect who is seen leaving the home at 8:40 p.m. on November 30th. They're wearing a dark coat, white hat, and a full face mask with light blue jeans. Police are urging anyone who is in the area between 8:30 and 9:30 p.m. that day to contact them, especially if they were in nearby London Field Park, which is where the suspect was headed after leaving the scene. Police are saying nothing about motive at this point.
At this point, we're still early in our investigation. We're still working to identify a motive. We're asking anyone who may know Mr. Chen to contact us, if they can provide us any insight on who would want to do this to a 46-year-old man and a 13-year-old boy. If you know either of them and know someone or some reason that they might be hurt, please contact us. We do want to speak to you immediately.
Police are also asking anyone who may have dash cam footage or CCTV from the area to contact them. CBC reporters who visited the scene earlier this week say they spoke to neighbors who say they often saw the father playing with the 13-year-old and his siblings in the yard. But those neighbors were too afraid to speak publicly while there are so many unknowns in this case. Renee Filipponi, CBC News, Vancouver.
The rising price of some grocery items appears to be leveling out, but you will still see your pocketbook squeezed in 2024. Yasmin Gandam explains what will cost you a lot more and what you'll save on.
Everywhere you look at the grocery store, the price is up. Sometimes by a little, often by a lot. And that's just what a new report finds. The Canada Food Price Report says you may see high prices buying bread, meat, and produce, but some savings on items like fresh fruit and a bottle of milk. The question remains, what continues to cause the price to jump?
But the main drivers are really two. There is the cost of production. So we're talking about labor, we're talking about basic ingredients, talking about things like, packaging. I think the other category is the macroeconomic and sort of the bigger picture, whether they be, the war in Ukraine or the Middle East, in terms of looking at, what it's done to oil prices or what it's done to wheat prices or fertilizers. So those are kind of temporary big impacts we'll see. And of course, climate. Climate change is no longer is it happening? It's definitely happening.
BC's food prices increased by just under 6% between September of 2022 and 2023. But there is some room for optimism. The rate of food inflation is expected to slow down.
From 10% 2 years ago, last year almost 6%. This year the prediction is 2.5% to 4.5%. So it's not back to zero or even back to the regular inflation rate, but it's at least coming down.
For now, people across the province are doing what they can to maximize their food dollar, but those options are no longer available to everyone.
One of the groups that is being more disadvantaged are people who don't have apps or smartphones and are used to coupons. But there still are coupons, and you still can find some, but it's just much harder now.
The report finds the typical family of four will spend an average $700 more. The high costs have people turning to temporary solutions like cutting back or switching to budget stores just to make ends meet. Yasmin Gandam, CBC News, Vancouver.
We have an update for you on a story we brought you last night. Full-time residents of a North Shore marina will now be allowed to stay despite an eviction notice sent earlier this week. NK Developments had sent an email on Tuesday. NK Development, I should say, sent an email on Tuesday telling people they would have to leave Mosquito Creek Marina within 6 months because of poor dock conditions. But during a virtual meeting last night, the company said the eviction notice only applied to part-time residents and recreational boaters, meaning those who call the marina home year-round can stay. International students in Canada are facing a new reality. As of next year, they will need to have access to twice as much money if they want to study in this country. Lindsay Duncombe explains what went into that decision and why some say it's long overdue.
These students came from India to Vancouver to study finance. Perhaps their toughest lesson? Making ends meet.
You have to do everything on your own. You have to study, you have to pay the fees, you have to pay the bills. And as inflation is going, it's kind of hard.
For many, expectations don't match reality. So the federal government is changing the rules. For the last 2 decades, international students had to prove they had 10 grand in the bank to get a study permit. Starting next year, that number will double to $20,635.
I think, while it reduces a significant number of international students that we're probably going to see come to Canada, I think, this is a good step towards transparency.
There are more than 800,000 international students in Canada, a number that's increased dramatically over the last decade as cash-strapped universities seek lucrative foreign tuition. But governments say some recruiters from private colleges are lying about the education students are getting and the real costs of living here. The federal minister of immigration is now threatening to reduce student visas if provinces don't crack down on shady operators.
In provinces, the diploma equivalent of puppy mills that are just churning out diplomas, and this is not a legitimate student experience. There is fraud and abuse, and it needs to end.
BC's post-secondary education minister is promising changes.
They're misrepresenting their product, and we need to address that.
One way a student can help make ends meet is to get a job. Officially, the number of hours an international student can work is limited to 20 a week. The federal government says it's reviewing that. Lindsay Duncombe, CBC News, Vancouver.
The holidays can be a time of kindness and good cheer, as well as stress and chaos. Some local businesses say they've seen a spike in abuse they take from customers around this time of year. So as Michelle Gomez explains, one business owner is pushing back.
Some Vancouver businesses are taking a stand against abusive customers. They say aggressive behavior is more common during the busy holiday season. At Mom P2, a cafe in Mount Pleasant, the customer is not always right.
Around this time of year, the holidays, a lot of people might be in a rush, or they might get a little bit antsy because of the crowding or because there's a wait.
The cafe trains its staff to work with customers to resolve problems calmly before things escalate, but not to be afraid to kick out those who are disrespectful. And Duong says he has noticed less incidents escalating since they applied this policy.
Our method of teaching is that, like I said to you, it's customer service, not customer servant, so there is a line that can't be crossed.
WorkSafe BC data shows violent acts in the retail sector have steadily increased over the past decade. A group of BC retailers recently formed the Save Our Streets Coalition. It's calling on the government to address what it calls a crisis in retail settings. Member John Clarides owns Marquee Wine Cellar on Davie Street. He says his fellow business owners have noticed an increase in problematic behavior.
We have people coming into a variety of retail stores, not only stealing, but abusing staff. Everybody has a right to come to work, do their job, get paid, and go home safe and sound. And the abuse that some, not necessarily so much here, but other retail store owners and employees take, it's just not on.
The Vancouver Police Department says it has been working closely with businesses to address ongoing crime and safety issues. Michelle Gomez, CBC News, Vancouver.
As the fastest growing city in BC, people in Surrey are living with a transit squeeze. The CEO of TransLink says 4 out of 5 bus routes in that city are overcrowded. Speaking at the Surrey Board of Trade today, Kevin Quinn warns that transit will need growing support if it's to keep up with demands as inflation and a drop in fuel tax revenues.
Without a new funding model, we will face an annual revenue shortfall of $600 million per year starting in 2026. That's about 30% of our annual revenues. Simply put, we need a better and more sustainable way to fund transit.
More than 1,000 people are moving to Surrey every month. Quinn says it's a challenge he has already brought to the provincial government. Another local mountain is now open for downhill fun. Grouse Mountain is ready to welcome riders, but with little snow on the slopes so far, there is less terrain to ride. So tickets for skiing and lift rides will be sold at a lower rate until more routes open up. Cypress Mountain, meanwhile, is also opening some cross-country runs tomorrow, and the downhill slopes there are open from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Many of BC's ski hills are facing a slow start because of a lack of fresh powder. If you're looking for some more holiday cheer, the P&E Winter Fair officially has opened as well. Our Caroline Chan has a sneak peek for you.
Lots happening at the P&E this month. The Winter Fair has something for everyone. The area is lit up with thousands of lights, and there are spots all over where you can see them twinkle. Whether it's along Candy Cane Lane or the synchronized bling to a holiday soundtrack during the Sparkle in the Light show. You can even hop on a train to check out the merry sights. Looking for some indoor activities? Stop by the rink where they have ice bumper cars and public skates. If you want to leave it to the professionals, you can see the Nutcracker on ice. Of course, the food is a big part of the P&E.
So there's just so much to do and see. Bring your families down. We'd love to see you. It's a great way to spend the holidays.
And don't forget to leave time to meet with the jolly old elf himself. The P&E Winter Fair is on until December 23rd.
Ho, ho, ho. Merry Christmas, everybody. Have a Happy New Year, too.
Caroline Chan, CBC News, Vancouver.
The BC group says childhood hunger is getting worse in our province. They've had to wait list children because of growing demand. We're going to speak with their director after the break. And thank you for joining our commercial-free live stream tonight. Two BC-based creators recently completed this year's TikTok Accelerator for Indigenous Creators program. They joined Gloria Makarenko on CBC Radio's On the Coast today to talk about the importance of having a space to share their culture and art.
And Ashley, how would you say TikTok has been an important space for you to share your culture, to educate along the way?
Yeah, it's been a really nice tool to use to share my story. So as Indigenous people, I feel like we're natural born storytellers, and using TikTok to share my story has been really fun for me. You know, you're able to tell what you want to say within a 1-minute video, use trending sounds, kind of make it more modern in a way too. So it's been really fun to just share my story with others who want to listen.
Okay, and Asha, maybe you can pick up on that theme in terms of why it is that TikTok is a special place for Indigenous creators to share their art and culture and educate along the way.
I feel like it's a space for all of us to kind of come together and show what we've been doing, which makes it really special in that sense. I feel like on other platforms, they don't really have the space held for Indigenous people. And with TikTok, we have native TikTok, or, you know, our hashtags and everything like that. So people can go through and they have relations to, you know, other creators and videos that they actually see on there.
Right. But Asha, it's not all positive on TikTok, right?
No.
What's some of the feedback that you've had, especially about, hey, you've got freckles, what's going on here?
I tend to get that a lot, and it comes with, I think, posting, being out there. So a lot of people see me, and the first thing that they say instantly is, well, you have freckles, so you're not native. And I'm like, well, were you there? Did you grow up with me? But I know who I am. I know my background. I know where I come from. So I just use it as a tool to try and educate others.
And you're okay with that? It seems to me like you're just hitting these kind of comments head on.
Yes.
I'm good. I'm good. You just do you.
I know my background. I know where I was raised, and I know where I come from. These people don't know who I am.
Right. Well, I mean, what about for you, Ashley? Putting yourself out there, does it have some negative effects at times?
Yeah, I mean, it does, but I feel like using these platforms too, there's things that we can use to protect ourselves as well. So like one of the Accelerator programs that we attended, one of the workshops was about going live. And I really have a hard time going live because I'm just naturally a shy person, but also because like you can face so much, you know, just anybody can hop on your live and say anything. So there is ways you can protect yourselves being on these platforms as well.
Food insecurity and the high cost of groceries are affecting many people in BC. But a local group says childhood hunger is getting especially worse. Backpack Buddies is a program that provides food to kids on the weekends across the province. For the first time, they've had to start a wait list because of growing demand. For more on this, we're now joined by Backpack Buddies Executive Director Emily Ann King. Emily, thanks for being here. Why has there been a spike in need this fall and winter?
You know, I think that since COVID, honestly, we've really seen sort of this compounding effect of so many factors that are hitting families. And, you know, most recently, the challenges of inflation. And it is really disproportionately affecting families and children. And we're seeing more demand than ever before for our program. And, you know, it's really alarming.
Are you able to tell us how much, like how many families do you serve and how many more families have asked for help?
So our current weekly numbers is 6,168 children on our program every week across the province. And our waitlist currently has 22 sites. So those sites might be just a school in one particular region, or it actually may be a community at large that's reached out that's looking for support for all of the schools within the district. And so it's a pretty vast number. And with that said, it's a little hard to quantify. But we do know from research that 1 in 5 kids in our province are living with food insecurity right now.
Has the demographic of people and children you serve changed, and where is this issue most dire in our province?
Yeah, we've seen sort of a new sector of people who are reaching out and asking for support. And so what I'm hearing on the other end of the phone are parents that were never concerned about putting food on the table before, 2 working incomes, but it's just the situation people are finding themselves in. It's rent, it's electricity, or it's food on the table. And what we are seeing, interestingly, is that over half of our wait list is actually on Vancouver Island. So we're seeing the need really dramatically in that particular area.
Is there any particular reason why, do you think, on Vancouver Island?
Outside of Metro Vancouver, the island has the highest percentage of children living below the poverty line. And I think in many of the more remote communities on the island, there's just fewer services that are available, unlike places like Metro Vancouver, where there may be, all sorts of organizations working towards supporting families in need.
It's a big problem, Emily. What would help tackle childhood hunger in this province?
I think it's a great question, one I ask myself all the time, and I think that there's answers at the federal level, the provincial level, and ultimately at the community level. And kids don't deserve to be hungry, and it's really a community effort at large. And at the very least, I would love to see a national school feeding program. Canada is the only G7 country that doesn't currently have one, and I think that would go a very long way and would be a great place to start.
Emily Ann King, Executive Director of Backpack Buddies, we appreciate your time and your perspective. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
There's a live shot slightly earlier tonight of Science World and BC Place, both brightly lit up. Darius will have your BC-wide weather forecast and a chance of snow here on the South Coast. Stick around.
So this was the front wraparound deck.
Stephanie Bunnell and her stepfather Ray walk around what is left of her home here in the Hebrides. She moved to PEI from Ottawa in July 2022, just months before the storm, to be closer to her family in Nova Scotia, where she grew up. That's where she was when Fiona hit.
I started seeing pictures on the Saturday of homes here being displaced, and one in particular floating down New London Bay. And I immediately thought that was most likely my home floating down the bay.
Her home landed here in a marsh next to the Campbellton Road.
The metal roof was sitting on the ground. The deck was sitting there. I was just in complete shock that it went from, a new place for me to just rubble, essentially, that needed to be carted away.
Bunnell filed a claim with her insurance company. That was rejected because damage from a storm surge is not covered. She then applied for the provincial disaster relief program being administered by the Red Cross. Her application was submitted in January 2023. In October, that claim was also rejected because the program is only for primary residences.
For me, I had no other place where I could go, so for me it was very clear that I met the primary residence criteria because I had no other lease, rental, or purchased home that I was able to live in at the time of the hurricane.
The rejection letter also said that Bunnell's home was on a floodplain, as designated by a coastal hazard map posted by the PEI government in December 2021. Bunnell says she was able to get insurance and a mortgage and was never told of any flood risk. Plus, the building was constructed more than 25 years ago. Bunnell is appealing the Red Cross decision, but she's not hopeful.
Because I think the whole point of disaster relief is to get the money to the people that need it most and to help people. And I really don't feel that this process has been successful in doing so.
Bunnell would like the government to do more to protect people whose homes are now threatened by coastal flooding.
If you don't want anyone to build on these floodplain properties, perhaps the solution is the government actually purchasing the land and to ensure that nothing gets built and destroyed in future storms due to climate change.
Bunnell says if her appeal fails, she may see if there are any other legal options. She doesn't want to declare bankruptcy. She is trying to sell the property, but it's not worth as much as the mortgage, which she is now left to pay, along with homeowner association fees, even though she no longer has the home. Nancy Russell, CBC News, Stanley Bridge.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
For 37 years, British Columbians have been donating to food banks at CBC British Columbia's Food Bank Day, raising more than $18 million for food banks in BC. December 1st kicked off the annual charity drive and continues to the end of the month. We thank you for generously donating and supporting local communities in our province. Make the season kind and donate until December 31st at cbc.ca/foodbankday.
You can call this next story a full circle moment in nature. A bear eating the washed-up carcass of a massive whale on a remote coastline near Tofino. The Department of Fisheries and Oceans says it's aware of the whale, and we're sending a crew out today to collect a sample to try to figure out what kind of species it is and why it died. It notes that decomposing animal is part of an important food chain, and the DFO would help First Nations communities harvest any bones members may want for social or ceremonial purposes.
The weather update is brought to you by Direct Buy Furnace. To cool and clean the air in your home, call Direct Buy Furnace. Installing Trane, the most reliable heating and cooling brand.
Ahead of the weekend, our BC-wide forecast with Darius Madavi, and plenty of people wondering what's going to happen here in the South Coast, Darius.
Might be a busy one. We do have several weather watches and warnings in place. For the South Coast, we're looking at a special weather statement, warning of potential snowfall at sea level. It's almost certain for definitely certain for higher elevations, and even for the North Shore. Many places going to see snow, potentially even making its way to the rest of Metro Vancouver. We're going to have a wind warning for the North and Central coasts, as well as the North Island, and then a snowfall warning up in parts of the central and northern interior, as well as inland parts of the North Coast. And it's all because of this atmospheric river streaming into Washington and Oregon, and then also here you can see the beginnings of the next one there, which might make its way to BC early next week, but remains to be seen. Don't worry about that just yet. But how is this atmospheric river running in here going to bring rain up here? Well, if we layer on our handy-dandy pressure map, you can see low pressure system heading up the coast before dissipating, and that is going to draw in some of that moisture. And here, if we add in our precipitation now as well, you can see all that moisture getting pulled up from the atmospheric river by that low pressure system, all that being drawn up and pushing into parts of the province. So a lot of rain for the coast, but also snow at higher elevations and plenty of snow for the interior as well. So going to be a busy weekend no matter where you are, especially if you're going to travel. In terms of winds, also that low pressure system bringing some strong winds, especially tomorrow and overnight tonight for the coast here, south coast and up to the north coast, parts of the southernmost parts of the north coast as well. In terms of accumulation, plenty of snow coming into the province, but rain for the coast as well. Seems unlikely that places like Victoria are going to get snow, but I wouldn't count it out, mostly just so that people won't be mad at me in case they do. So just a fair warning. For Vancouver, again, likely to see some snow in some places, but by no means guaranteed. We'll take a look at that in a second. You can see the snow, plenty of snow up and down the coast, but some rain as well, especially on the west coast and for the South Island. And then if this wants to go, there we go. We can see here that if we zoom in to the local mountains, snowfall coming overnight, tomorrow afternoon into overnight into Sunday, and potential for some snow down here as well. Although this white here is really just trace amounts, so no guarantee there especially. But good news for the local mountains and for people who want to go skiing. And then here we can see in our forecast a little bit of snow and some rain tomorrow likely, and then periodic rain Sunday before a little bit of a dry period on Monday.
It's a variety pack. Darius, have a good weekend.
You too.
That is your late news for Friday. Thank you for joining us tonight and all this busy week. For news at any hour, check our website, cbc.ca/BC. Your next local news is tomorrow morning at 6:30 on CBC Radio 1. And Tanya Fletcher will have your late news here at 10:30 right after hockey. Enjoy the weekend. Stay safe.